Princess Vela stood at the tall window of her chamber and looked down at the landing platform. A small human ship was coming down from the sky. It was not a warship. It was not a trade ship. It was a simple transport vessel. Gray and plain. She felt her stomach turn with anger and shame. Today was the day her future husband would arrive. She had been told about humans before. Her teachers said they were a young species. They had only discovered space travel 200 years ago. They were not strong like the Kiran people. They did not have claws or scales or the ability to see in the dark. They were soft. They were fragile. They lived short lives and died easily. And yet, the Galactic Council had decided that Vela must marry one of them. It was politics. It was always politics. The Kiran Empire needed allies. The humans controlled important trade routes near the Outer Rim. A marriage between a Kiran princess and a human would create a bond between the two species. It would bring peace and profit. Vela understood all of this. She was not stupid. She had been raised to serve her empire. But understanding something and accepting it were two different things. Her door opened, and her advisor, Commander Roka, walked in. He was an old warrior with gray scales and one missing eye. He had served her father for 50 years. "The human ship has landed, Princess," he said. "Your future husband has arrived." Vela did not turn from the window. "Tell me about him again." Roka pulled out a small tablet and read from it. "His name is Tay. He is 32 years old by human counting. He was a soldier in the Earth Defense Force for 10 years. He retired 3 years ago. Since then, he has lived a quiet life. He grows plants. He reads books. He cooks food." "A farmer," Vela said with disgust. "They send me a farmer." "He was a soldier before," Roka reminded her. "Human soldiers are not real soldiers. They are children playing with toys." Vela finally turned to face her advisor. Her golden eyes were cold. "My previous suitors were warriors. General Crix of the Northern Fleet. Commander Bora of the Elite Guard. They were powerful. They were respected. And now I must marry a human who grows vegetables." Roka was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The council believes this marriage is important. The council can believe whatever they want. I know what this is. This is a punishment." She was right. And they both knew it. 3 months ago, Vela had spoken against the council in public. She had called them weak for wanting peace with the Vorn collective. The Vorn had killed her mother. Vela wanted war. The council wanted trade agreements. This marriage was their way of putting her in her place. "You should go down to meet him," Roka said gently. "It would be proper." Vela took a deep breath. She was a princess. She had duties. She could not hide in her room like a scared child. "Fine," she said. "Let us go see this human." The landing platform was busy with servants and guards. The human ship had opened its door, and a ramp had come down. Vela stood at the edge of the platform, with her hands behind her back. She made her face blank and cold. She would not show any emotion. A figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Vela had seen pictures of humans before, but this was her first time seeing one in real life. The man called Tay was shorter than she expected. He was maybe a head shorter than her. His skin was a light brown color. His hair was black and cut short. He wore simple clothes, a white shirt, and dark pants. No armor, no weapons. He walked down the ramp with a small bag over his shoulder. When he reached the bottom, he stopped and looked at her. Then he smiled. It was a warm smile, a gentle smile, the kind of smile a person gives when they meet a friend. "Hello," he said. His voice was soft and calm. "You must be Princess Vela. I am Tay. It is nice to meet you." Vela did not smile back. "Welcome to Kira," she said flatly. "I hope your journey was not too difficult." "It was fine. I slept most of the way." He looked around at the palace, at the tall towers, and the purple sky. "Your home is beautiful." "Yes, it is." There was an awkward silence. Tay did not seem bothered by it. He just kept smiling, looking at everything with curious eyes. Roka stepped forward. I will show you to your quarters, sir. You must be tired. That would be nice, thank you. Tay turned back to Vela and gave a small bow. I look forward to getting to know you, Princess. Vela said nothing. She just watched as Roka led him away. When they were gone, one of her guards came to stand beside her. His name was Captain Yong, and he was one of her most trusted men. What do you think of him? Yong asked. He is exactly what I expected, Vela said. Weak, soft, harmless. Perhaps that is not a bad thing. A harmless husband will not cause you trouble. Vela shook her head. A harmless husband is useless. He cannot protect me. He cannot fight beside me. He is nothing but a political decoration. She turned and walked back toward the palace. Her heart was heavy with disappointment. She had hoped, in some small way, that the human would surprise her. That he would be different from what the reports said. But he was not different. He was just a simple man with a simple smile. Over the next few days, Vela avoided Tay as much as possible. This was not difficult. The palace was large, and she had many duties. She attended meetings with military commanders. She reviewed reports from the border. She trained with her weapons in the practice hall. But sometimes, she would see him. She saw him walking in the gardens, looking at the alien flowers with wonder in his eyes. She saw him in the kitchen, talking to the cooks and learning how to make Kiran food. She saw him sitting by the fountain, reading a book and drinking tea. He always looked peaceful, content, happy. It made her angry. How could he be happy? He was far from his home. He was about to marry a woman who clearly did not want him. He was surrounded by aliens who looked down on him, and yet, he smiled. He laughed. He acted like everything was fine. One evening, Vela found herself standing on a balcony, watching Tay in the garden below. He was planting something in the soil. His hands were covered in dirt. He was humming a soft tune. He is strange, she said to herself. Perhaps, said a voice behind her. Vela turned. It was her younger sister, Princess Mira. She was smaller than Vela, with softer features and kinder eyes. You have been watching him, Mira said with a small smile. I am studying my enemy. He is not your enemy. He is your future husband. Same thing. Mira came to stand beside her. They both looked down at Tay. I spoke with him today, Mira said. He is nice, very polite, very gentle. Gentle is another word for weak. Maybe. Or maybe gentle is another word for kind. Mira looked at her sister. Not everyone shows strength through violence, Vela. Some people show strength in other ways. Vela made a dismissive sound. You sound like father. Father was wise. Father is dead. The words hung in the air between them. Their father had died 2 years ago, killed by an assassin from the Vorn Collective. It was one of the reasons Vela hated them so much. Mira touched her sister's arm. Just give him a chance. You might be surprised. Vela did not answer. She just watched the human in the garden, his hands in the dirt, his face peaceful and calm. She did not believe she would be surprised. She believed she knew exactly what kind of man Tay was. She was wrong. The wedding happened 2 weeks after Tay arrived on Kira. It was a grand ceremony with thousands of guests. Leaders from many planets came to watch. The Galactic Council sent their representatives. News ships floated in the sky, recording everything. Vela wore the traditional armor of a Kiran bride. It was made of silver, metal, and blue crystals. It was heavy and uncomfortable, but she did not show it. Her face was like stone throughout the ceremony. Tay wore a simple black suit. He looked small next to her. He looked ordinary. When they exchanged vows, his voice was steady and calm. He said the words with sincerity, like he actually meant them. Vela said the words too, but she did not mean them. This was just a performance. A show for the politicians and the cameras. After the ceremony, there was a feast. Vela sat at the head table with her new husband. She barely looked at him. She spoke to generals and ambassadors. She discussed politics and trade and military matters. Tay sat quietly beside her. He ate his food. He drank his wine. Sometimes, guests would come to speak with him. He was always polite, always friendly. He asked them questions about their planets and their cultures. He seemed genuinely interested in their answers, but no one took him seriously. Vela could see it in their eyes. They looked at Tay the way one might look at a pet. Cute, harmless, unimportant. When the feast ended, Vela and Tay walked to their shared chambers. It was tradition for newlyweds to spend the first night together. Vela had dreaded this moment, but when they entered the room, Tay simply smiled at her. "I will sleep on the couch," he said. "You can have the bed." Vela blinked in surprise. "What? I know this marriage was not your choice. I do not want to make you uncomfortable. We can take things slowly. There is no rush." For a moment, Vela did not know what to say. She had expected him to assert himself, to claim his rights as her husband. That was what Kiran men did, but Tay was not Kiran. "Fine," she said finally. "Do what you want." She went to the bed and lay down. She heard Tay moving around, getting comfortable on the couch. Then the lights went out. In the darkness, Vela stared at the ceiling. She felt confused, and she hated feeling confused. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. Vela continued her duties as a princess. She worked hard. She trained hard. She tried to forget that she was married. But Tay was always there. He was there in the morning, making breakfast in the kitchen. The cooks had grown to love him. He taught them recipes from Earth, strange dishes with strange names. He made something called kimchi that the palace staff became obsessed with. He was there in the afternoon, walking through the gardens. He had started his own little section of the garden, growing earth plants alongside the Kiran ones. The gardeners said he had a gift. Everything he touched seemed to grow. He was there in the evening, sitting in the library, reading books about Kiran history and culture. He was teaching himself to read the Kiran language. He was not fast, but he was determined, and he was always smiling. One day, Vela was walking through the palace when she heard laughter coming from the kitchen. She stopped and looked inside. Tay was there with several servants. They were cooking together. One of the younger servants, a girl named Sora, was trying to flip something in a pan. She failed, and the food fell on the floor. Everyone laughed, including Sora. Tay picked up the fallen food and threw it away. Then he showed Sora how to flip properly. He was patient. He demonstrated again and again until she got it right. When she finally succeeded, he cheered for her. Vela watched this from the doorway. She felt something strange in her chest. It was not anger. It was not disgust. She was not sure what it was. She left before anyone saw her. That night, she found herself talking to Captain Young. "The human is popular with the servants," she said. Young nodded. "He is kind to everyone. He remembers their names. He asks about their families. The staff speak highly of him. It is foolish. A prince should not spend his time with servants. Perhaps. But they respect him for it." Vela frowned. "Respect? He does not deserve respect. He has done nothing. He has no power, no strength. He is just pleasant." Pleasant. Yang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My grandmother used to say something. She said that the loudest warrior is rarely the strongest. The strongest warriors are the quiet ones. Your grandmother was a soldier, the best in her unit. She killed 30 enemies in the Battle of Red Mountain. But at home, she was gentle. She grew flowers. She sang songs to her grandchildren." Yang smiled slightly. She said, "True strength does not need to announce itself." Vela did not respond. She thought about Tay, quietly planting his garden, quietly reading his books, quietly making friends with everyone he met. Could there be strength in that? She was not sure. More time passed. Vela noticed small things about her husband. She noticed that he woke up at the same time every morning, before the sun rose. He would do exercises in their room, push-ups, sit-ups, stretches. He moved with precision and control, like someone who had trained for many years. She noticed that his body, while small, was lean and hard. There was no extra fat on him. His muscles were not big, but they were defined and compact. She noticed that when he walked, his footsteps were almost silent. He moved smoothly, efficiently, never wasting energy. She noticed that his eyes, which usually looked warm and friendly, sometimes became sharp when he was watching something. Like a predator tracking prey, but then he would blink and the sharpness would disappear. These were small things, easy to miss, easy to ignore. Vela tried to ignore them. One afternoon, Vela was training in the practice hall. She was fighting against a training robot. Using her sword, she was fast and powerful. The robot could barely keep up with her. She did not know that Tay was watching from the entrance. When she finished, she turned and saw him standing there. He clapped his hands together. "That was amazing," he said. "You are very skilled." Vela felt her face grow warm. She was not used to compliments from him. "It is nothing special. All Kirin warriors train like this. Still, it is impressive." He walked closer, looking at her sword. "May I see it?" She hesitated, then handed him the blade. He held it carefully, testing its weight and balance. His hands moved with familiarity. "A good weapon," he said. "Well made. Well maintained. You know about swords?" "A little." He handed it back to her. "I trained with blades when I was younger, but I was never very good. I preferred other methods." "What methods?" He smiled. "Boring ones. Nothing exciting like this." Before she could ask more questions, a servant came running in. "Princess, Commander Roka needs you immediately. There has been an incident at the border." Vela forgot about Tay and rushed to the command center. It was a minor incident. A small group of Vorn ships had crossed into Kirin space. They had been chased away without much trouble. But it reminded Vela of the danger that surrounded her empire. The Vorn collective was their enemy. They had killed her father. They had killed her mother. One day, there would be war, and when that day came, Vela would be ready. But what about Tay? What would happen to her soft, gentle husband when the fighting began? She pushed the thought away. It did not matter. He was not her concern. That night, she returned to their chambers late. Tay was asleep on the couch, a book open on his chest. He looked peaceful, innocent. Vela stood over him for a long moment. Then, without thinking, she took a blanket and covered him with it. He stirred slightly but did not wake. She went to bed, feeling confused again, and angry at herself for feeling confused. She did not understand this human. She did not understand why he was the way he was. But soon, very soon, she would begin to understand, and it would change everything. The grand banquet was the most important social event of the year. Leaders from across the galaxy gathered at the Kirin Palace to celebrate peace and prosperity. There was food and wine and music. There were speeches and dances and political discussions. Vela hated these events. She preferred the battlefield to the ballroom. But she was a princess, and she had duties. She wore a beautiful gown of deep purple, the royal color of Kira. Her silver hair was styled elaborately. Jewels hung from her ears and neck. She looked magnificent. Beside her, Tay wore a simple black suit again. He had refused anything fancier. "I do not want to embarrass you by trying to look like something I am not," he had said with his usual gentle smile. Vela had not argued. Part of her was grateful. At least he knew his place. The banquet hall was enormous, filled with hundreds of guests. Vela walked among them, greeting ambassadors and generals, making polite conversation. Tay stayed close to her but did not interfere. When someone spoke to him, he was friendly and humble. "Your husband is charming," said Ambassador Kira from the Velox system. "So different from what I expected of a human." "Yes," Vela said flatly. "He is full of surprises." She did not mean it as a compliment. The night went on. Speeches were given, toasts were made. A band played traditional Kirin music, and some guests began to dance. Tay touched Vela's arm lightly. "Would you like to dance?" She looked at him. "Do you even know how to dance to Kirin music?" "I have been practicing." "When?" "At night, when you are asleep." She stared at him. He had been practicing dancing? For her? Before she could respond, a loud sound interrupted them. The great doors of the banquet hall burst open. Armed soldiers poured inside, but they were not Kirin soldiers. They wore black armor with red symbols on their chests, the symbol of the Vorn Collective. Screams filled the hall. Guests ran in all directions. The Kirin guards drew their weapons, but they were outnumbered. "Assassins!" someone shouted. "Protect the princess." Vela moved immediately. She reached for the small blade hidden in her gown. Around her, chaos exploded. Laser blasts flew through the air. Guests fell to the ground. Captain Yong appeared beside her. "Princess, we must get you to safety." "No," Vela said. "I will not run from these cowards." She counted the attackers. There were maybe 20 of them, heavily armed. They were cutting through the crowd, moving toward the head table, moving toward her. This was an assassination attempt. They had come to kill her. Vela raised her blade. She would fight. She would take as many of them with her as she could. But then she realized something. Where was Tay? She turned to look for her husband. He had been standing right beside her a moment ago. Now, he was gone. Had he run away? Had he hidden, like a coward? She did not have time to think about it. 3 assassins were charging toward her. She braced herself, ready to meet them. The first assassin was only 10 steps away when something happened. A figure appeared behind the assassin, moving like a shadow. There was a quick flash of movement so fast that Vela almost could not see it. The assassin made a strange sound and collapsed to the ground. The figure moved to the second assassin. Another flash. Another body falling. The third assassin turned, raising his weapon. But he was too slow. The figure struck him in the throat, then twisted his arm at an impossible angle. The weapon fell. The assassin screamed, then he was silent. 3 attackers, 3 seconds, 3 bodies on the floor. The figure stepped into the light, and Vela felt her breath stop in her chest. It was Tay. But it was not the Tay she knew. This was not the gentle man who grew plants and made breakfast. This was something else entirely. His face was calm. Empty. His eyes were cold and focused, like chips of ice. There was no warmth in them, no kindness, only deadly purpose. He moved toward the remaining assassins with smooth, efficient steps. He did not run. He did not hurry. He simply walked forward like death itself. An assassin fired at him. Tay shifted slightly, and the laser blast missed him by inches. He closed the distance and struck the assassin's neck with his palm. The man dropped instantly. 2 more assassins came at him together. Tay ducked under the first one's attack and drove his elbow into the man's stomach. As that one doubled over, Tay grabbed the second one's weapon, twisted it from his grip, and used it to shoot both of them in rapid succession. It was not a fight. It was an execution. Vela stood frozen, watching her husband move through the attackers like wind through leaves. Every movement was perfect. Economical. There were no wasted motions. No hesitation. He struck and moved, leaving bodies behind him. The assassins began to realize their mistake. They tried to regroup. They tried to concentrate their fire on Tay. But he was never where they expected him to be. He used their own allies as shields. He turned their weapons against them. He exploited every opening, punished every error. In less than 2 minutes, 15 assassins lay on the ground. Some were dead. Some were unconscious. A few were still groaning in pain. 5 remaining attackers decided to flee. They ran toward the doors. Tay picked up a fallen laser pistol. He raised it with one hand, his arm perfectly steady. 5 shots. 5 bodies hit the floor before they reached the exit. The banquet hall fell silent. Tay lowered the weapon. Slowly, the coldness faded from his eyes. The warmth returned. He looked around at the damage, at the scared guests, at the injured people. Then he looked at Vela. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was soft again, gentle, like nothing had happened. Vela opened her mouth, but no words came out. She could not understand what she had just witnessed. This man, this quiet, smiling man who grew vegetables and made friends with servants, had just single-handedly destroyed 20 trained assassins. Captain Young stepped forward, his face pale with shock. How? How did you do that? Tay looked down at his hands. There was blood on them. I should wash up, he said quietly. I do not want to get blood on my suit. He turned and walked away, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Vela finally found her voice. Stop him! Guards moved to block Tay's path. He stopped and looked back at Vela with a puzzled expression. Is something wrong? He asked. Wrong? Vela strode toward him, her gown swirling around her feet. You just killed 20 people in less than 2 minutes. Who are you? What are you? Tay was quiet for a moment, then he sighed. I suppose I should explain. Yes, you should. He looked around at all the people watching them. Perhaps somewhere more private? Vela grabbed his arm and pulled him out of the hall. She dragged him to a small meeting room nearby. She slammed the door shut and turned to face him. Talk, she commanded. Now. Tay sat down in a chair. He looked tired. Sad, even. I was not always a gardener, he began. Before I retired, I was a soldier. But not a regular soldier. I was part of a special unit. We did difficult work, the kind of work that does not appear in official records. You were an assassin, among other things. He met her eyes. I was one of Earth's most effective operatives for 10 years. I completed missions that were considered impossible. I eliminated targets that no one else could reach. I was very, very good at killing. Vela felt a chill run down her spine. Why did you stop? Because I was tired of death, tired of violence. He looked at his hands again. I wanted something different. I wanted peace. I wanted to grow things instead of destroying them. So I retired. I bought a small house. I planted a garden. I tried to become a normal person. But they chose you for this marriage. Yes. The Earth government thought a former operative would be useful. Someone who could protect you if necessary. He smiled bitterly. I did not want to come here. I did not want to return to that life. But they said it was important. They said it could prevent a war. Vela sat down across from him. Her mind was racing. All this time, she said slowly. All those months. You pretended to be weak. You pretended to be harmless. I was not pretending to be harmless. I was trying to be harmless. There is a difference. He leaned forward. I did not want you to see what I really am. I hoped I would never have to show you. Why? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Because I was afraid you would look at me the way you are looking at me now. Vela realized that her expression was hard and cold. She was looking at him like he was a monster. But was he? He had saved her life. He had saved the lives of everyone in that hall. She did not know what to think anymore. She stood up and walked to the door. Before she left, she paused. Thank you, she said without turning around, for saving me. Then she was gone. Tay sat alone in the empty room, staring at his bloody hands. The monster was awake now. He wondered if it would ever go back to sleep. News of the assassination attempt spread across the galaxy within hours. Every news channel showed footage of the attack. Every headline talked about the Vorn Collective's bold move against the Kiran Empire. But the biggest story was not about the attack itself. It was about the man who had stopped it. Human Prince destroys 20 assassins in 2 minutes. The deadly secret of Princess Vela's husband. Is this the most dangerous human in the galaxy? Suddenly, everyone wanted to know about Tay. Reporters gathered outside the palace. Military experts analyzed the footage of the fight, slowing it down frame by frame. They could not believe what they were seeing. His reaction time is extraordinary, one expert said on a news broadcast. His movements are efficient beyond anything I have ever seen. This is not normal human capability. This is something else entirely. Vela watched the broadcasts from her chamber. She had not spoken to Tay since that night. She had been avoiding him, trying to process what she had learned. Commander Roca came to see her on the third day. "The council wants a report on your husband," he said. "They want to know everything about his past." "I do not know everything about his past. He told me he was an operative. That is all." Roca handed her a tablet. "I did some research. This is what I found." "Well." Vela took the tablet and began to read. As she read, her eyes grew wider. Tay had not just been an operative. He had been the leader of Earth's most elite Black Ops unit. They called it Ghost Division. Their missions were classified at the highest level. They did things that governments denied ever happened. The records showed that Tay had completed over 200 missions in 10 years. He had eliminated terrorist leaders, criminal warlords, and corrupt officials on dozens of planets. He had infiltrated organizations that were supposed to be impossible to penetrate. He had survived situations that should have killed any normal person. But the most interesting part was his nickname. Other soldiers called him the Gardener. The Gardener? Vela looked up at Roca. Apparently, he would always plant something after completing a mission. A flower. A tree. Some kind of life. Roca shook his head. The other soldiers thought he was strange, but they also feared him. One report says that enemy combatants would surrender when they heard the Gardener was coming for them. They preferred prison over facing him. Vela set down the tablet. Her hands were shaking slightly. Why did he retire? The records do not say. But there are rumors that something happened on his last mission. Something that changed him. Roca paused. Something that broke him. Vela thought about Tay's sad eyes when he told her about wanting peace. About wanting to grow things instead of destroying them. What had happened to make the galaxy's deadliest human want to spend his days in a garden? She needed to find out. She found Tay in his usual spot, the small garden he had created in the palace grounds. He was on his knees, digging in the dirt. His hands were covered in soil. He looked up when she approached. "Princess," he said. "I was wondering when you would come." Vela sat down on a stone bench nearby. She watched him work for a moment. "I read your file," she said. "I thought you might. It says you completed over 200 missions, that you were Earth's most valuable weapon. I do not like that word. Weapon." He pulled a weed from the soil and tossed it aside. "Weapons do not have choices. I always had a choice." "Did you?" "The file says your last mission was classified. No details, just that you retired immediately after." Tay's hands stopped moving. He stayed very still. "What happened?" Vela asked quietly. For a long time, he did not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. "There was a terrorist group on a planet called Nexar 7. They were planning to release a biological weapon. Millions of people would have died. My team was sent to stop them." "And you stopped them?" "Yes. We eliminated the terrorists. We secured the weapon." He paused. "But the information we had was wrong. The building they used as headquarters. It was also an orphanage." Vela felt her stomach drop. The children were being used as shields. The terrorists thought we would not attack if there were children present. They were wrong. Tay's voice cracked slightly. "We saved millions of lives. But in doing so, we killed 17 children." The garden was silent except for the sound of wind in the leaves. "It was not your fault," Vela said. "The terrorists used them as shields." "I know. Everyone told me that. The commander said I did the right thing. They gave me medals. They called me a hero." He laughed bitterly. "But I still see their faces every night when I close my eyes. I still hear their screams." He finally looked at her. His eyes were wet with tears. "That is why I retired. That is why I wanted a new life. I thought if I could grow enough flowers, plant enough trees, maybe I could make up for what I had taken." He looked at his hands. "But last night, I killed again, without hesitation, without mercy. I thought I had changed, but I had not. The monster was just sleeping." Vela did not know what to say. She had spent her whole life training to be a warrior. She had killed enemies in battle. She had never questioned it. But she had never killed children. She had never carried that kind of weight. She stood up and walked over to him. She knelt down in the dirt beside him. "You saved my life," she said. "You saved hundreds of lives at that banquet. The people you killed were murderers who came to assassinate your wife." "I know." "Then why do you look so sad?" Tay wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, leaving dirt on his face. "Because every time I kill, I remember that I am good at it. I remember that part of me enjoys it. And that frightens me more than any enemy ever could." Vela was quiet for a moment. Then she did something that surprised both of them. She reached out and took his hand. "I have killed many enemies," she said. "I have fought in battles. I have taken lives without regret. I thought that made me strong." She squeezed his hand. "But I think you are stronger than me, because you carry your guilt instead of ignoring it. You face your darkness instead of pretending it does not exist." Tay looked at her with surprise. "I thought you considered me weak." "I was wrong." She met his eyes. "I have been wrong about many things." They sat together in the garden as the sun began to set. The purple sky turned to gold and red. The flowers Tay had planted swayed gently in the breeze. "I never wanted you to know what I was," Tay said softly. "I wanted to just be your quiet husband. The harmless man who grows vegetables. Perhaps you can still be that man. Most of the time." Vela smiled slightly. "But now I know that when I need him, there is also a warrior beside me. A protector. Is that what you want? A protector?" Vela thought about it. She had always believed she did not need protection. She was strong enough to protect herself. But maybe strength was not about being alone. Maybe strength was about having someone to stand beside you in the darkness. "I want a partner," she said finally. "I want someone who sees me as an equal. Someone who will fight beside me, not for me." Tay nodded slowly. "I can try to be that." "Good." Vela stood up and brushed the dirt from her gown. "Now come. There is much to discuss. The Vorn Collective has declared war. We must prepare." Tay rose to his feet. The sadness in his eyes was still there. But there was something else now, too. "Purpose. War," he said quietly. "Yes. Are you ready?" He looked at his garden one last time. At the flowers he had planted. At the life he had created. Then he looked at Vela. His wife. His princess. "I am ready," he said. Together, they walked back to the palace, side by side, as equals. The quiet husband was quiet no more. And the galaxy would soon learn to fear the gardener once again. The War Council met in the Great Hall of the palace. Generals and admirals from across the Kirin Empire gathered around a massive holographic map. Red dots marked Vorn Collective territory. Blue dots marked Kirin space. And in between, there was a vast gray zone where the fighting would happen. Vela stood at the head of the table, dressed in her military armor. She looked every inch the warrior princess. Beside her, Tay stood quietly in his simple black clothes. He still looked like a gardener, but no one in the room made the mistake of underestimating him anymore. "The Vorn have assembled a fleet of 300 warships," Commander Roka reported. "They are planning to strike at our outer colonies first. If they succeed, they will have a direct path to our homeworld." "Roka, we have 200 ships ready for battle," said Admiral Sung, an old warrior with many scars. "We are outnumbered." "Numbers are not everything," Vela said. "Our soldiers are better trained. Our technology is more advanced. With respect, Princess, technology and training mean little when you are facing a fleet 50% larger than yours." Admiral Sung shook his head. "We need more ships. Or we need allies. The humans have offered support," Roka said. "They can send 50 warships to assist us." 50 ships from Earth would help," Admiral Sung admitted. "But we would still be outnumbered." The room fell into discussion. Strategies were proposed and rejected. Numbers were calculated. Plans were drawn and redrawn. Through it all, Tay remained silent. He listened carefully, his eyes moving across the holographic map. Finally, Vela turned to him. "You have been quiet, husband. Do you have nothing to contribute?" Every eye in the room turned to Tay. Some of the older generals looked skeptical. They respected him now. But they were not sure what a former assassin could offer in a full-scale war. Tay stepped forward to the map. He touched a few controls, and the view changed. Instead of showing the entire region, it now focused on a single star system. "This is the Rick system," he said. "It is the main supply base for the Vorn fleet. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment passes through here before reaching the front lines. We know about Ricks," Admiral Sung said. "It is heavily defended. We do not have the forces to attack it directly." "You do not need to attack it directly." Tay pointed to a small moon orbiting the fourth planet. "This moon contains the main fuel depot. Without fuel, the Vorn ships cannot fight. They cannot even move. The fuel depot is protected by a planetary shield," Roka pointed out. "Our weapons cannot penetrate it." "Weapons cannot. But a small team could." Tay looked around the room. "I have studied the Vorn's security systems. They have a weakness. The shield must be lowered briefly every 6 hours to prevent overheating. During that window, a small ship could slip through. A team of infiltrators could land on the moon, reach the depot, and destroy it from inside." The generals exchanged glances. "What you are describing is a suicide mission," Admiral Sung said. "Even if the team gets through the shield, they would have to fight through hundreds of guards to reach the depot. And even if they succeed, how would they escape?" Tay smiled slightly. "They would not need to escape. The destruction of the depot would create a chain reaction. Every ship in the system would be caught in the blast. The Vorn fleet would be crippled before the war even begins. You are asking us to sacrifice soldiers on a mission with no return." "No." Tay shook his head. "I am volunteering to lead the mission myself." The room erupted in noise. Generals shouted objections. Admirals demanded explanations. Roka stepped forward with worry on his face, but the loudest voice was Vela's. "Absolutely not." She grabbed Tay's arm and pulled him away from the table. "You cannot do this. I will not allow it." "It is the only way," Tay said calmly. "With the depot destroyed, the Vorn will be weakened. Your fleet will have a chance, and you will be dead. Perhaps. Or perhaps not." He smiled. "I have survived impossible situations before. I am rather good at it. This is different. This is not an assassination. This is war." Tay took her hands in his. His eyes were warm, but there was steel behind them. "When I married you, I made a promise. I promised to protect you. To protect your people. This is how I keep that promise. By dying, by giving you a chance to win." He touched her face gently. "I was broken when I came here. Tired of killing. Tired of death. I thought I could escape my past by pretending to be someone else. But you showed me something important. You showed me that strength is not about running from who you are. It is about using what you have to protect what you love." Vela felt tears forming in her eyes. She fought them back. She was a warrior. Warriors did not cry. "I cannot lose you," she whispered. "Not now. Not when I am finally starting to understand you." "Then understand this." He leaned closer. "I am not doing this because I want to die. I am doing this because I want to live. I want to live in a galaxy where our children will be safe. Where your empire will be at peace. And the only way to make that happen is to end this war before it truly begins." Vela stared at him. "Our children." He had said, "Our children." "You think about the future?" "Every day. I think about the garden I want to grow with you. The meals I want to cook for you. The life I want to build." He smiled sadly. "But none of that will happen if the Vorn win this war, so I must do what I do best. I must be the gardener one more time." The War Council had gone quiet. Everyone was watching them. Vela took a deep breath. She was a princess. She had responsibilities. She could not let her personal feelings interfere with what was best for her empire, and Tay was right. His plan could work. It could save millions of lives. But that did not make it easier. "If you do this," she said slowly, "you will not go alone. I will send my best soldiers with you. I will send my best soldiers with you. I appreciate that, but I work better alone. That is not a suggestion. It is an order. She stepped back and raised her voice so everyone could hear. The mission will proceed. A special team will be assembled. Captain Yong will select the best warriors in the Empire. And my husband will lead them. Yong stepped forward and bowed. It will be my honor, Princess. Tay looked at Vela with surprise. You are letting me go? I am not letting you go. I am commanding you to succeed. There is a difference. She met his eyes. You will destroy that depot. You will cripple the Vorn fleet, and then you will come home to me. Do you understand? Tay was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled the same warm, gentle smile he had given her on the day they met. I understand, Princess. I will come home. 2 weeks later, a small ship slipped through the Vorn shield during the maintenance window. It landed on the fuel depot moon without being detected. The mission was brutal. Tay and his team fought through waves of guards. They faced automated defenses and security systems. 3 of the 10 team members fell before they reached the core of the depot, but they reached it. Tay set the charges himself. He gave the order to retreat. The surviving team members made it back to the ship just as the explosions began. The fuel depot erupted in a ball of fire that lit up the entire system. The chain reaction spread, consuming Vorn ships and stations. The enemy fleet, 300 warships strong, was reduced to burning wreckage in minutes. The war was over before it truly started. Vela received the news in the palace. She listened to the reports with a calm face. She gave orders. She coordinated the peace negotiations. She did everything a princess should do. Then she went to her chamber and waited. Hours passed. A day passed. On the second day, a small transport ship landed at the palace. Vela ran to the landing platform, not caring who saw her. The door opened. A figure limped down the ramp, supported by Captain Yong. It was Tay. He was burned and bloody. His arm was in a makeshift sling. He looked like he had walked through fire itself. But he was alive. Vela reached him and threw her arms around him. She held him tight, not caring about the blood or the dirt. You came home, she whispered. I promised I would. His voice was weak but warm. I always keep my promises. She pulled back and looked at him. At his gentle eyes. At his kind smile. At the warrior hiding beneath the gardener's skin. I love you, she said. The words surprised her. She had never said them before. She had never even thought them until this moment. Tay's eyes widened. Then they softened. I love you too, he said. I think I have since the moment I saw you standing on that platform, looking at me like I was the most disappointing thing in the galaxy. Vela laughed through her tears. You were disappointing, a simple farmer for a princess. And now? She touched his face. Now you are the most extraordinary man I have ever known, and I am grateful every day that the council forced me to marry you. They walked together into the palace, leaving the past behind. The war was over. The future was beginning, and the alien princess finally understood something important about her human husband. He was not weak. He was not harmless. He was simply a man who had learned that true strength was not about violence and power. True strength was about love. True strength was about choosing to grow flowers in a garden instead of planting enemies in the ground. True strength was about being gentle in a universe that rewarded cruelty. And as they built their life together, raising children, tending gardens, leading their people through years of peace, Vela never forgot the lesson Tay had taught her. Humans were not weak because they smiled. They were not harmless because they were kind. They were simply waiting for the moment when someone they loved was in danger. And when that moment came, heaven help anyone who stood in their way.